Iran's military has threatened to completely shut down the strategic Strait of Hormuz if US President acts on his threats to target Iran's power plants. Listen to this.
If the United States' threats regarding Iran's power plants are carried out, the following punitive measures will be taken immediately. 1. The Strait of Hormuz will be completely closed, and it will not be reopened until our destroyed power plants are rebuilt. 2. All power plants, energy, and information and communications technology, ICT, infrastructure of the Zionist regime will be widely targeted. 3. All similar companies in the region that have American shareholders will be completely destroyed. 4. The power plants of the countries in the region that host American bases will be our legitimate targets.
This is in addition to its threat of striking desalination infrastructure across West Asia if its power infrastructure is hit. Hossein Kermanpour, Iran's health ministry spokesperson, has warned of humanitarian catastrophe from strikes on power and water systems. He compared it to the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. As Trump's 48-hour deadline looms, Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi has said his country would not be swayed by more threats, while adding that the strait is not closed. This is what he said. He said ships hesitate because insurers fear the war of choice that you initiated and not Iran, quote unquote, Foreign Minister of Iran Abbas Araghchi. 20% of the world's crude oil and liquefied natural gas, LNG, normally passes through this strait, the Strait of Hormuz. But traffic through the vital strait has been brought to a near standstill since the start of this war on the 28th of February. In recent days, Iran has allowed some vessels from the countries that it considers friendly to pass, while warning that it would block ships from countries that it says have joined the aggression against it. Iran's parliament is mulling imposing tolls on shipping through the strait. Parliament Speaker Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf said maritime traffic would not return to its pre-war status. And amid all of this, Iranians in the capital Tehran staged a pro-government rally on Sunday. Many waved Iranian flags and others held images of the new leader, Mojtaba Khamenei. The war is now in its fourth week, with Israel and the US continuing strikes on Iran. To remind our viewers, this is the timeline that Donald Trump had set on the first day of this war. He said they are looking at 4 to 5 weeks. We're already in week 4. No signs of the war abating. In the latest, the Israeli army has said that it has launched large-scale wave of strikes in Tehran. Blasts were heard in the Iranian capital. Earlier, the US Central Command released new videos showing strikes on various military targets in Iran. In a post on X, CENTCOM said that the US forces continue to eliminate the Iranian regime's one-way attack drone capabilities. This as Trump's Treasury Secretary says that the US may escalate its attack against Iran to be able to wind down the war.
I think he said he could wind the war down at any time he wants. And Kristen, this is the only language the Iranians understand.
Iran also continues its retaliatory strikes. At least one Iranian missile carrying cluster warheads was seen in the night sky over Jerusalem and the occupied West Bank and Israel after midnight on Monday. It is yet to be confirmed whether it was more than one missile that was spotted, with smaller bombs spreading out. Israel has warned its citizens to expect weeks more fighting against Iran. UAE, Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, they also reported interceptions of Iranian drones. All right, to discuss this further with me, I'm now being joined by Dr. Rohan Gunaratna. He's joining me from Singapore. He's a professor of security studies at S. Rajaratnam School of International. All right, Doctor, thank you so much for joining me here. Dr. Gunaratna, there is a lot to tap into. Let's quickly start with the 48-hour deadline. The clock is ticking. I think we're close to about 30 hours now. That's already lapsed in that 48-hour deadline. Do you feel the clock is ticking on Iran, or do you feel that clock is ticking on Trump?
It is clicking on Iran. It is because the Americans and the Israelis and now a number of countries have joined in the fight against the Tehran regime that has attacked 12 countries and is continuing to threaten the world. So I believe that the Iranian capabilities have diminished very significantly. Their aerospace weapons, both their missiles and drones. So it's a question of time that Iran will not be able to fight back.
Dr. Gunaratna, as you mentioned that, the narrative of this war has largely looking at Iran's strikes as retaliatory strikes because Iran did not fire first. That the entire world saw. The war was started in the middle of diplomacy before the fourth round could have been achieved. The third round was looking positive. Oman's foreign minister mentioned this himself. As far as the objectives of the war are concerned, they still remain loose because a lot of people are disillusioned by the reasoning of this war. And let me quickly go over it. Joe Kent, that's the former director of National Counterterrorism Center, he said that 18 US intelligence agencies mentioned that there was no nuclear capacity in Iran. He said, then Leon Panetta, a former CIA director, he said Trump he's stuck in a rock and a hard place at this point with no exit policy at this time. John Brennan, another former CIA director, he said there is no rationale to the war. Again, there was no imminent threat from Iran. The Pentagon said there was no imminent threat from Iran. Tulsi Gabbard said there was no imminent threat from Iran. IAEA said no evidence that Iran is building a nuclear bomb. So at this point, Iran said that if you attack us, we'll go after your bases. Do you still find this as an aggression from Iran's side, which had started after US attacked them?
Iran has been building a functional nuclear weapon. No one disputes that. The dispute is over whether Iran was going to use it and how quickly Iran was going to manufacture that weapon. During the Oman-mediated indirect talks, the Omanis very clearly informed a message from Iran to the Americans, to Steve Witkoff, that Iran was planning to develop certain capabilities, and in fact that they had sufficient enriched uranium for 11 weapons. Now, whether Iran told that to threaten the United States during the mediation stage, we do not know. But what is important to know is that Iran certainly built a huge missile capability and was definitely enriching uranium beyond the point of a civilian program. So I believe that the American and the Israeli actions were anyway going to take place because Iran was building these two capabilities. Of course, whether Iran was going to attack in the immediate future, yes, that is being disputed at this point, as you very clearly mentioned. The third is, of course, Iran has been historically supporting terrorist proxies, the Lebanese Hezbollah, the Ansarullah of the Houthi movement, the Popular Mobilization Forces or the Hashd-Shabi in Iraq, and also a number of terrorist plots, including 2 attempts to kill Trump.
We take that point of yours, sir. As far as the Houthis, Hezbollah, Hamas are concerned, they have been backed by Iran. There is no doubt in that. The world saw what happened on the 7th of October. There is nothing to deny that either. But at this point, when we look at what is happening in the Strait of Hormuz, which is causing largely the ripples across the world, and the entire world is now feeling the weight of what is happening in West Asia. It's due to the Strait of Hormuz. Iran made it clear that this is going to be our play, we will block it. They even demonstrated it perhaps as a final warning during a war drill that they carried out shortly before 28th of February, before the war started. So it was clear what they're going to do. In the latest, UAE issued a joint statement. There's a coalition which is forming. A lot of the Western nations, a lot of European countries, they've come together and they've agreed, saying that they are willing to get involved in the Strait of Hormuz to unblock it. But Iran raises a question here that what was the condition of the Strait of Hormuz before Iran was attacked? That's the question they pose from the Iranian side. what is your view on this? Because before this war started, there was no issue.
There was no issue in the Straits of Hormuz, but certainly in Bab el Mandeb, which is the Yemen, the Straits alongside Yemen, there were attacks by the Houthis, but that also ended. So in many ways, what you are saying is correct. That is, the Strait of Hormuz went back to this state of conflict after the war between the United States, Israel, and of course, Iran.
We started with the 48-hour deadline, Dr. Gunaratna. That clock is ticking. You see it as a clock ticking on Iran. But now Iran has again said that if our energy infrastructure is attacked, we'll go after desalination plants. Now, desalination plants in countries in the Gulf especially, this is their lifeline. These countries cannot function without desalination plants, and this is direct civilian infrastructure which is essentially powering their entire livelihood at this point. As per whatever Iran has said till now, they've acted on it. They said Strait of Hormuz, they've blocked it. They said we'll go after your bases in West Asia, they've done it. Now they're saying we'll go after your desalination plant. Do you feel this is a time for Trump to perhaps rein in, because they are acting on everything that they said they would do? And this is perhaps a last warning now for Donald Trump not to look at an aggressive means, but perhaps return to the diplomacy route.
Iran's capabilities are terminal, huge decline in missile drone capabilities. Their capacity to fight has diminished. But as you say, they will attack the desalination plants because they still have sufficient drones and missiles to mount a few attacks in the immediate neighborhood. And I believe that it is so important for those vulnerable countries to protect those capabilities, because the desalination plants needs to be protected.
Dr. Gunaratna, do you find the cracks within the MAGA stronghold and the MAGA support base widening? Because as I won't go over everything, but Joe Kent, Leon Panetta, John Brennan, Tulsi Gabbard, Pentagon, IAEA, all suggesting there was no imminent threat, and finding more bases, or I would say less bases now in the war inside the US. Is that weakening the Trump administration from inside?
Trump administration position is that Iran posed a very significant threat to the neighborhood, and also Iran posed a very significant threat to the United States. Of course, this argument will continue, because now there are many experts who argue for and against US and Israeli action in Iran.
And they are diminished, no doubt. Iran has taken a big amount of damage. There is no denying that. They may be diminished to a certain degree, but what we just saw less than 48 hours ago, sir, in Dimona and Arad, and Iranian missiles, whatever is left, they are proving air defenses to be porous, even in Israel, which is considered to be, I would say, stalwarts in air defense systems. So how diminished do you think they really are?
Certainly, Israel is very capable, but as you witnessed, as we all witnessed, the Iranian defenses were penetrated. The defense systems were not robust enough to stop that attack, and if the missiles hit the nuclear
Israeli air defenses, you mentioned.
Yes, if it hit the nuclear station in Israel, it would have caused unprecedented damage, because there would have been a radiation leak.
All right, Dr. Gunaratna, I think this is, at this point, there are too many voices, credible voices, statements coming out suggesting there is a certain amount of disillusionment regarding why this war was started in the first place. 4 to 5 weeks was the timeline. We're already in week 4. No signs of it abating. A lot of voices are now suggesting, and these are former CIA director level people saying that there is no exit route for Trump. Perhaps that off-ramp was left in the first day of the war. They could have exited then when they had a symbolic win after they eliminated the supreme leader. But now there is a new supreme leader. The regime in Iran, it's largely intact. This is what Tulsi Gabbard herself said in the Senate hearing. Perhaps a symbolic win is what US needs at this point, and that can only come from the Strait of Hormuz if that is their play. But Trump has already mentioned they've won a number of times, but they continue to send in more reinforcements militarily to the region and more threats going in towards Iran. So perhaps Trump isn't getting what he wants before he exits from it. But the clock, I would argue, is ticking on Donald Trump, because the midterm elections are on his head, not on Iran. For Iran, it's a matter of survival. They've agreed to their fate. You bombard us as much, we'll keep fighting to our last breath. That's the sense that one gets when you look at the way Iran is fighting back. And the narrative, as I mentioned, it's looking at Iran's fight as a retaliatory one, regardless of all that has happened in the past. So let's leave it there for now. Dr. Rohan Gunnaratna, thank you so much for joining me. And there will be more to discuss. Look forward to speaking with you again.
Thank you.